All right, let's jump right in, shall we? We're taking a deep dive into Spotify's Q3 earnings call today. Going to dissect their performance, especially those interesting chats between execs and analysts. We're super focused on, of course, the podcasting side of things, naturally. Numbers, quotes, maybe even a few head-scratching moments. Ready?
Spotify's certainly given us a lot to chew on. Right off the bat, it's clear they're heading towards their first full year of profit, exceeding their own targets, too, ahead of schedule. Even Daniel Ek, the CEO, said, "This is the year of monetization." Quite a statement, wouldn't you say?
Year of monetization, huh? Bold. Let's get down to brass tacks then. 640 million monthly active users and 252 million subscribers. Not too shabby. They beat their guidance, which, of course, Wall Street loves to see. But I've noticed some analysts are a bit worried about ad revenue growth. It seems to be slowing down.
Yeah, it's a valid point. Ad revenue, as a percentage of their total revenue, has actually shrunk, went from 14% down to under 12%. And this is while their user base keeps growing, which seems a bit counterintuitive, right? One analyst even went so far as to call it underwhelming.
Underwhelming. Ouch. I imagine Spotify has some thoughts on that.
Yeah.
They can't just ignore that kind of feedback, can they?
Definitely not. They're emphasizing their efforts to, let's say, branch out their advertising revenue streams. They're building their own ad exchange and partnering with the trade desk. The goal seems to be moving away from just relying on those big brand campaigns. Their CFO actually explained it like this: "We believe this will lead to a larger and more efficient marketplace for our inventory over the long term."
Interesting. So they're shifting away from those massive brand deals, going for a more, automated approach, more programmatic. The big question is, will it actually work? Will they actually boost their ad revenue that way?
Time will tell. The CFO did say that 2025 will be a year of, well, experimentation. They'll be testing and trying these new approaches. It's a whole new world for them, this auction-based advertising. Building a system like that takes time. Getting it running smoothly is another challenge altogether.
Makes sense. Well, let's hope they figure it out quickly, because let's be honest, those profit numbers are looking pretty good right now. Operating income hit a new high, right? 454 million, and free cash flow reached an all-time high of 711 million. Those are impressive numbers.
True. But it's worth noting that this strong operating income was influenced by a pretty big increase in social charges because of their share price appreciation. They specifically mentioned this. It's out of their control and wasn't factored into their forecasts.
Okay, so a little asterisk there. Good news overall, but those ad revenue questions are still lingering. Now let's move into the Q&A part of the call. Things always get a little more purdy. Heated, shall we say, when the analysts start grilling the execs.
Absolutely. One thing that kept coming up was this need for, well, more transparency. Analysts wanted a clearer picture of Spotify's long-term podcasting strategy. One analyst even flat out asked, "How does Spotify see itself competing with YouTube, especially on the podcasting side?"
Yeah, that's the elephant in the room, isn't it? YouTube is already such a major player in video podcasting. And, we've seen big names like Joe Rogan choose YouTube as their platform.
Right. Eek's response was interesting. He said, "We're seeing incredible growth in podcast consumption on Spotify," and emphasized that they're focusing on, as he put it, meeting creators where they are, which basically means accepting that many creators want to be on multiple platforms.
So not necessarily trying to, steal creators away from YouTube, just offering them another way to reach their audience. I'm curious, what do you think? Is that a winning strategy?
It's certainly a different approach, not about locking creators into those exclusive deals. Only time will tell if it actually works in the long run, though. So let's get back to that whole super premium tier thing. Remember, Daniel Ek kind of teased this during the Q&A. He kept mentioning superfan needs, which is intriguing.
Right. And it seems like a great way to, bring in more money. But what would it actually look like? What could they possibly offer that would make people pay even more for Spotify?
Well, he was being pretty vague on the specifics, understandably. It's still very early stages. But he did suggest things like, I don't know, maybe even better sound quality and closer proximity to artists. Imagine early access to concert tickets, maybe. Personalized messages from your favorite musicians. That's the kind of thing they might be thinking about.
I see, yeah. Hardcore fans would probably love that kind of stuff. But I wonder, can they actually make it happen? I mean, people are already griping about the recent price hikes. Introducing a whole new, even more expensive tier could alienate some users, don't you think?
It's a valid point. But Eek did address that in a way. He said, "We are very sensitive to making sure we have a price ladder that works for everyone." So it sounds like they're walking a tightrope, trying to cater to those super fans without, scaring off everyone else.
It'll be interesting to see how that plays out for sure. Now let's talk about something else that came up in the Q&A. Competition. Specifically, competition from Apple Music. One analyst even asked point blank, how are you thinking about your relative growth rates, yours versus Apple's? Pretty direct, huh?
Straight to the point. Geek's response was, well, let's just say it was very corporate. We feel really good about our growth rates relative to the competition. Not a lot of substance there. But he did highlight those price increases in 6 markets. And the fact that, despite that, churn remained low. He even said that Spotify is actually the price leader in a lot of markets.
That's a bold claim, especially since Apple Music is known for being, shall we say, competitive on price. Do you really think Spotify can hold on to that price leader position?
It's hard to say. It's a gamble, for sure. They're basically betting that all their features, like curated playlists and podcasts, are valuable enough to justify higher prices. But it's a risky move, no doubt, especially in such a competitive market.
Speaking of competition, another analyst brought up Amazon and Netflix, specifically how they're spending big bucks on sports content to attract advertisers. Wanted to know if Spotify felt pressured to do the same.
Ick pushed back on that one, said, "The Ringer's success proves that we are very much in the game, and we are attracting both listeners and advertisers in these types of content areas." He also kept talking about their focus on programmatic advertising, saying things like, "We want to meet marketers where they are."
So they're really leaning into podcasts, huh? And trying to make it super easy for advertisers to, buy ad space across their network. But I can't help but think, is focusing solely on podcasts a bit of a risky move? Compared to, let's say, the Netflix and Amazon approach. They've got movies, TV shows, live sports, the whole shebang.
You've got a point there. Spotify is definitely putting all their eggs in one basket. They're betting big on podcasts, even with the addition of video. All in on audio, while the competition is branching out, trying all sorts of different content.
We'll see if that gamble pays off. Now, video podcasting. That's another challenge they're facing. YouTube is king in that space, right?
Right.
And I think one analyst even mentioned Joe Rogan, who's got a massive following on YouTube.
Yep. Easter acknowledged the competition, of course. He said YouTube obviously has scale in video. It's something that they've been doing for a very long time. But he emphasized Spotify's focus on, what creators and consumers want. He even said, "We've learned a lot from our experience in podcasting, and one of the key takeaways is that creators want to be multi-home."
Interesting, right?
So the strategy is not about forcing creators to choose Spotify exclusively, more about being another option, another platform for them to reach their audience. But hasn't Spotify missed the boat on video podcasting? I mean, YouTube is already so established. Yeah, they definitely have some work to do to catch up, but they do have a loyal user base, right? And a strong brand in the audio world. So it all comes down to how they leverage those assets to, make a dent in YouTube's dominance.
Okay, so we've talked about super premium tiers, competition, and the video podcasting hurdle. Let's switch gears a bit. One analyst brought up an interesting potential revenue stream, charging a small subscription fee for ad-supported users.
Right. The analyst pointed out that some video streaming services are already doing this, so naturally they wanted to know if Spotify would consider it.
Makes sense. It could be a good way to, squeeze a bit more revenue out of those free users. But wouldn't it risk pushing them towards, say, YouTube Music, which is completely free?
Eek tackled that concern head-on, said, "We are in a very different industry than the video industry. Music is a much more fragmented industry where you have lots of free alternatives to choose from, whether it's radio or other services. We don't think that's a sustainable model for the long term." So it sounds like they're not convinced that the freemium model, which works for video streaming, would work for them.
I can see their point. They definitely know the music industry inside and out. No question about that. Now, you mentioned earlier that there was a lot of talk about Spotify's long-term goals, their ability to keep growing. Let's dig into that a bit more.
One analyst just went for it, asked flat out, "Can you sustain your 20% growth for the long term?"
Wow. No beating around the bush there. How did Eek handle that one?
He didn't shy away from it at all. He admitted they have ambitious goals, want to be one of those companies that, keeps exceeding expectations. He said, and I quote, "We believe that we have a very long runway ahead of us."
Sounds confident. What's fueling that confidence, though?
He pointed to the massive potential for user growth. I mean, they're only reaching a tiny fraction of the global population that, actually cares about music. He also brought up the success of those price increases and new products like audiobooks as proof that they can make more money per user.
So it's a combination of things, really. User growth, pricing power, product innovation. But isn't there a limit to how much they can raise prices before people start looking for alternatives?
Of course, he even admitted that. User growth can't last forever, he said. Eventually, you get to a point where you have to rely more on monetization.
Makes sense. They can't just keep adding users indefinitely. They have to figure out how to make more money from the users they already have. The question is, can they do that without, alienating those users? That seems to be the big question looming over this entire earnings call.
It's a tricky balancing act, and we haven't even touched on some of the other interesting things they talked about, like, oh, the possibility of Spotify distributing apps and their venture into, get this, immersive audio experiences. Sounds pretty wild, right?
Definitely intriguing. Sounds like a good place to stop for now.
Hmm.
All right, so we're back. Still digging into Spotify's Q3 earnings call. We've covered the financials, the strategies, the challenges. Now it's time to look ahead. What's next for Spotify? Any hints about what they're cooking up?
Well, one thing that came up in the Q&A was this idea of Spotify, get this, becoming a distributor of apps. Imagine record labels could launch their own apps, superfan apps with all kinds of exclusive content, and Spotify would be the platform for it all.
Whoa, so not just a music streaming service anymore, more like a hub for all things music related. Sounds like a pretty big shift for them.
Right. Ike didn't give us a lot of details, but he didn't shut it down either. He said, I think it's a natural evolution of where things are going in the music industry. We want to be a partner to the industry and help them find new ways to connect with fans.
I can see the appeal, especially if they can make it, a seamless experience. Access everything in one place. Music, merch, behind-the-scenes stuff, all within the Spotify app.
Exactly. That would definitely set them apart from, say, Apple Music, who are really just focused on, streaming music. They could even challenge those big app stores, Apple's App Store, Google Play.
Ambitious. But a lot of hurdles too, right? Convincing developers to build for their platform, making sure those apps are, high quality, secure, and then figuring out how to actually make money from them.
Tons of challenges, no doubt about it. But if they can pull it off, it could be huge for Spotify and for the whole music industry.
Definitely a bold move. Fits with their whole, we're the ultimate audio destination thing, right? But even with all these potential new revenue streams, they still have that 20% annual growth target hanging over their heads, the one they set back in 2022. Can they actually hit that, you think?
Ike seems pretty sure of himself. He kept saying they're only reaching a small percentage of the global population that cares about music. So there's still room to grow, user-wise. But he also admitted that eventually, monetization has to be the focus.
Got to make more money from the users they already have without, driving them away. Tricky. But there's another thing they could explore. Something that goes beyond traditional music streaming. Immersive audio experiences.
Right. That's a whole other frontier. We're talking 3D audio, spatial sound, interactive stuff. It's a sonic revolution, and Spotify could be right at the forefront.
It's exciting to think about. Personalized soundscapes, maybe for meditation, focus, or immersive audio adventures. Interactive experiences that blur the lines between music and, gaming, storytelling.
Exactly. It's a whole new category of content. Could attract a whole new audience. People who want more than just, background music.
It really feels like Spotify is at a crossroads. They've dominated music streaming.
Yeah.
But they're not satisfied. They're pushing boundaries, redefining what a music company can be. It's pretty cutting to watch.
The big question is, will these big swings pay off? Can they handle app distribution, crack the video podcasting code, build a successful immersive audio ecosystem? So many questions.
Only time will tell. But one thing's for sure. Spotify's story isn't over yet. It's just the beginning. And we'll be here, breaking it all down as they navigate the wild world of audio.
So stay tuned, keep those ears open, get ready for the next chapter. Who knows what they'll come up with next?
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll be back soon with more insights and analysis on the always changing world of audio. Until then, keep listening.